Civ 7's trial by fire has begun, and it doesn't seem pretty. You see, Civilization 7 launched into early access for Deluxe Edition and Founders owners, and they are not happy. Roughly half of them disliking the game. So what on earth is going on with Civilization 7? Well, from what I've seen and heard, my view is that there are a mixture of sometimes complex and sometimes really straightforward issues, and people's feelings seem pretty high. The response to me seems to be a mixture of initial review bombing, as well as seemingly missing features from Civilization 7, or options missing from the game. Then there's that UI, that user interface, goodness gracious, as well as some DLC sort of dilemmas and troubles, and maybe some functional issues, again kind of going back to those missing features around both single player and multiplayer. And feelings certainly are high, right? The game is nothing like Civ 6. Veteran players are having to relearn the entire thing at a loss for words. It was supposed to be a fairly simple strategy game. The most disappointing drop ever experienced. Now, a lot of this may be hyperbolic, but I'm not trying to dismiss it, because some of it is also grounded in things that Civ 7 is missing, and that do deserve to be called out. There's really a mixture of, again, quite complex things going on here. And of course, this is just during the early access period. These are presumably Civ fans, veterans, right? Those who probably knew what they were getting into, but also those willing to spend an extra $100 to pay that FOMO tax, just to play the game a couple of days early. I wonder if the masses will respond similarly. Perhaps they'll be less involved in the franchise, I don't know. Will the wider variety of leaders, the extra poets, explorers, the philosophers, and the scientists, more than ever before, will that variety put the masses off as well? For me, or anyone who had at least read the Steam page before buying the game, these decisions, like the ages system, the changing of civilizations, those core mechanics did not come as a surprise. And it surprises me a little bit that you would buy the game knowing that they were in it, to then just be mad about it, or buy the game having no idea that they were there. But this isn't about blaming the victim or picking on people for having feelings. It's about actually drilling into what are the issues with Civilization 7. A lot of them hopefully can be fixed. So I won't focus on the personal politics that I dislike the leaders' side of things here. You're absolutely welcome to have those views, but those views on leaders are not the focus. I don't want to focus on things that were revealed in 2024, but instead generally on the problems that we're facing right now and the things that can hopefully be fixed soon. The first one, maybe not the most important, but definitely one that needs to be addressed as people, I believe, build up more playtime. That's missing features. Specifically, I'm talking about missing features from the game setup, because it's my view actually, Civilization 7 launched with a lot of things that were previously paywalled features. If I think back to Civ 5 or Civ 6, thinking, the kind of natural world, disasters, religion even in Civ 5, right? A lot of that stuff is already in the game. Some things that aren't though, maps and map variety. There is very little of that, about 6 types or 6 options, which actually boils down to only around 4 types. And as we discussed on stream the other day, when you play through them, you start to notice actually a bit of repetition. The islands map is just the big continent map with a couple of cutouts through the middle of the continent to turn it into islands. And where is my True Earth map? I think it's coming. It better be coming. Other things, of course, are here as well, and often mentioned. I can't mention everything in this video, but the most notable one under missing features would be those advanced game setup options. It's not just the type of map, but how many players are playing within it. Some advanced options are coming, like the ability to start a game in a later age or play just a one-age game, but all in all, it seems that most people feel that Civ 7 is lacking a lot of those core maps, those core advanced game setup features that we're used to. The second overarching criticism, again a very valid one, particularly in some places, is the UI. This is definitely the most common one. Oh my goodness. Every second person who turned up in the stream comments thought the UI was terrible, right? Often this is obviously going to be somewhat subjective. What you think looks good, what I think looks good. I like the minimalism of it. Maybe you don't like the minimalism of it. However, some parts are just rushed, improper, or, well, broken, actually. When I look at the tech tree and see those slightly malaligned textures, I'm not going to lose any sleep over it overnight. Like, I'm just not. I'm really more focused on the big picture features and how the fundamental game is actually playing. However, it is also obviously not the way it's meant to be, and it does give that impression like it was quickly pushed out. Some of those UI elements moving through the ages, the loading screen, we've seen it before, I'm sure we'll see it again. They do need some work. Absolutely. I would also note there are a lot of parts that look very good though. Down the bottom right, that sort of notifications next turn function, or parts that have literally just carried through from previous Civ games, like the names of civilizations, though some of the numbers around the edges also need a glow up. For me, it's probably the overbuilding UI that could use a little bit of work. I'd like to more easily, more readily know which buildings are from previous ages. Granted, it's something I'll learn over time, but I think it just needs to be highlighted so that everybody, regardless of how much Civ playing time you have, can just very easily tell, hey look, that building is from a previous age, and I should probably overbuild that because it's just not all that efficient anymore. There are also other questions around whether it provides enough information, whether it actually tells you what you need to know. My personal take, and maybe it's just because I have a little bit more playtime than everyone else, I don't know, is that on the whole it's probably not too bad, except for some of those specific things that I've already mentioned, like that overbuild example. Another big example, another big criticism, is that DLC model, which leaves a bad taste in many people's mouths. Now again, this didn't come as a surprise, we discussed it before the game came out into early access, but that doesn't justify it. That sort of instant or nearly instant release date of the first DLC, with some, what many would consider to be a key civ or key leader, like Great Britain, missing from the base game. And then of course there's that future age prospect, which we haven't really talked about much, but in the live stream the other day, 80% of people who responded to my poll said, yeah, I think there will be a future age. Some kind of Cold War, postmodern, near future maybe. Give me my giant death robots kind of age. And whether you're excited about that prospect or the extra leaders, I don't know if many people particularly are, at least no one's willing to say it. The fact that the DLC is rolling out so quickly and seemingly in abundance absolutely leaves a sour taste. That won't change though, unfortunately. That is just kind of the model that we're in. It's the model that we've been in for a very long time now, weirdly, like easily over a decade. Again, not to justify it, but it does explain it. To me, this was a fairly expected part of Civilization's release, just as it was for Civ 6, Civ 5, you name it, just don't call it Beyond Earth. The counterpoints are of course fairly obvious, I probably don't need to talk too much about them. This gives the game ongoing support, funds their costs. It's no secret that they were in the game, it's indeed actually just a part of it at this point. The product, the actual product of review though, is the base game. So let's get back to talking about that base game. The final sort of overarching bit of criticism before we actually discuss what Firaxis are doing tends to lean into the multiplayer side of things. A side of things that I don't have a lot of experience with. I'm a single player, but it is missing some things. Multiplayer, the total number of players in a game is fairly limited, I believe down to 5 in certain ages, as well as people calling out for different things like asynchronous multiplayer, as well as hot seat multiplayer, which thankfully has been highlighted as something that is coming soon, though important to note at the time of recording, it ain't there. So, some of the things that we've discussed are predictable, like the backlash towards that DLC. Firaxis must have known that that was coming, but some of them less so. Maybe, or more specific to Civilization 7 than the broader industry model. How have they responded? Let's have a look. I believe they've responded fairly swiftly, but also in a fairly vague or sort of generic, if not expected way, at least in the first half of their response. It starts with a brief message. It says, hey, yeah, thanks a lot. You're the greatest fans. We've heard a lot of feedback. It's been a huge effort to bring you the game. We're going to keep pouring over that feedback, Steam reviews, etc. during the early access period. Not a lot of juicy detail for us there. What if they actually highlighted? Thankfully, that's shown in the second part of their update. And they keep it fairly brief. There are 3 points that they're prioritizing, they say, as quickly as possible. They also share here that they intend to share with us a development roadmap as soon as they can. Interesting. I'll be very keen to see what is on that. What can we expect in the short term though? First up, UI improvements. Hey! They say that their top priority is to improve the UI. They need some time to digest the feedback, but some areas that they're looking at include making UI interactions more intuitive, improving the readability of the map, that's a big one. We talked about that in my review video. Fixing areas of polish like formatting, and more. They say they're committed to getting it right. They'll share more when they can. Secondly, those missing features. Which ones are they trying to implement? They say that several key features that they've seen us ask for will be included in the upcoming patches, of course, as free updates. These things the community has been rattling on about, and rightly so, include adding teams to multiplayer games so that you can play cooperatively. Yup, core function totally needs to be there if you're a multiplayer fan. Secondly, allowing full player counts in multiplayer in all 3 ages. Thirdly, allowing you to pick your starting and ending age for single or double-aged games. Fourthly, a wider variety of maps, thank you very much. Fifthly, enabling city and religion names to be customized. A small thing, but a thing that matters. And finally, hot seat to multiplayer. Those are, on the sort of positive side, great things to be added to the game. On the critical side, you're absolutely right. They probably ought to have been there from the start. So hopefully they roll out as quickly as possible. Speaking of rolling out, a quality of life update, patch 1.1.0 is deploying in the month of March. They say that work is well underway. It'll include fixes and adjustments that were already on their radar. Quality of life UI, balance to the AI, and improvement, adjustments to diplomacy and crises, as well as bug fixes. And they end by saying, hey, if you've got feedback, Steam discussion forum, or the new Civilization Discord server, the official server, would be the place to deliver that. So let's bring it all together. I think that this covers a lot of the criticisms, particularly when you look at maps, teams, multiplayer settings. All of that stuff is good stuff. There will be other emerging issues that'll come out as people play more and build up more playtime. One of the ones that occurred to me most prominently on stream yesterday was just how quick the modern age can be. And it seems like I'm not alone in that. It wasn't just my lobbies, but indeed everybody's. The game tends to end with the completion, well, actually before the completion often, of some of those victory projects. Sometimes it can just end. Hopefully they can fix some of those overarching pacing things as well, which were not mentioned here, but I do start to feel those more and more the more time I put into the game. Are they, or really any of these things, game breakers? Well, for me, probably not. But I think that the valid criticisms that have been raised at the start and throughout this video, for me, the map variety, the game options, just to name a few, probably will become more of an issue the more I play the game. Problematic areas with the UI, of course, give that unfinished or rushed sense. But my verdict still remains the same. The game will improve over weeks and then over years, just like Civ 5 and Civ 6 do. I like Civ 7. I don't see myself going back all that often to play an older Civ game, except for maybe the odd time, nostalgia, whatever it may be. Unlike Civ 6's launch, Civ 7 is enjoyable enough for me that I'll actually be playing it. I didn't like Civ 6 at launch, didn't play it for years, really. The mantle has carried over, and this will be my primary Civ game. And of course, naturally, I'll be covering it and following it here so long as I keep playing it, and so long as I'm staying interested in it. Civ 7 has lifted itself up to roughly a 50% positive rating at the time of recording, and as I've said already, I would expect that to lift with time, once the bombs have cleared, the dust has settled, and the game has received a couple of good quality free updates just to fix up all of these, hopefully relatively easy fixes, to bring it in line with the level of polish that some of the audience rightly expect. This video was about, of course, those audience expectations, and the ways in which, the key ways at least I can see, that they weren't met. It's not full, complete, comprehensive. Of course, there'll be more. If, for whatever reason, the game actually just isn't working for you, firstly, check your graphics drivers are up to date. But secondly, I haven't covered that, right? That just sucks. That sucks. But by and large, that does not seem to be the issue. And also, by and large, for what it's worth, I think it's a really fun game. I actually like the ages system. I think the map and the world, aside from those UI issues, of course, but the actual world looks gorgeous. And I love fighting with the modern age units or exploring the seas in the exploration age. I think they've done a good job, and that's why Civilization 7 will be, just like 6 was and just like 5 was before it, the definitive Civ game. But as most of us who have been here for a while know, it's probably going to take a year or two for it to reach its full potential. Thank you for being here. I'll see you next time.